Growing up, my imagination was captured by StarCraft Brood War. I was never really any good, and I was mainly a punching bag for my much older brother. His favorite thing was to mind control one of my worker units, make an army with my own faction, and then run me over. StarCraft was really important to me because it was the first time I had been exposed to asymmetric player powers in games. The first time I ran my Zerglings into a bunker full of Marines, only to have them all be taken out, I was convinced that Terran was better than Zerg. And inevitably, when we would switch races and I would lose again, a whole world of wanting to learn strategy opened up. This race is good at overwhelming your opponent with cheap units, while this race has more powerful units with shields. It was so interesting how different of a game of StarCraft you could play based on the powers you were given. Asymmetry in games is one of my favorite mechanics, and although it can cause some games to suffer with overpowered abilities or secret take that mechanics that are not super fun to play around, especially if you aren't even aware they exist. And sometimes gameplay can be a little fragile, especially if there's a big experience gap. To me, it's worth the risk. Asymmetry gives a lot of creativity into the player's hands. You have to try to understand what your faction is good at, play around others' strengths, go for their blind spots, and make tons of decisions, understanding that some things you do will be easily countered. So today, I want to talk about chaos in the old world. If you can track down a copy of this now out-of-print game by Eric Lang, I can't recommend it enough. I found mine from my local board game exchange group, and the box is totally broken, and half of the cultists are missing pieces. But I think Chaos in the Old World does asymmetry better than any other board game. Chaos in the Old World is an area control, direct combat game, where you can win by either scoring enough victory points or by spinning your dial all the way to the end. The different gods have different dial spin conditions, and the dials even have different numbers of turns until the end. So that means that some gods will almost always win through their dial, some will almost always win through their points, and some will have a careful balance between the two. The gods all have different units, different action cards, and different unit upgrades. Somehow all of these mechanics coalesce into a balanced, thinky 3-hour slog with plenty of cunning strategy and tactical brilliance. And I think the asymmetry is the key to its success. The Blood God Khorne is definitely the most intimidating faction. Combat in Chaos is done by rolling dice. You get 1 die per unit you have, and successes happen on 5 or 6. Khorne's special ability is he gets 2 dice per unit. Worse is that Khorne's dial advancement condition is just to kill another unit. So before you know it, Khorne will be spinning their dial to the end. The Khorne player can be extremely destructive. In some games, they're almost like a force of nature on the board state, and a majority of the table talk between other players is convincing the Khorne player to go for somebody else. Take a look at this upgrade card. Bloodletters. In battle, your bloodletters roll their battle dice and inflict any casualties before other figures roll their dice. In Chaos, units attack simultaneously and can kill each other off, but this upgrade makes it so that Khorne can attack other enemies without any repercussions. And during play, Khorne can place a card like Ritual Slaying. Each time you kill a figure in this region, draw a Chaos card. If Khorne goes unchecked, this can be a huge boon for them during the battle phase. Now, while these cards and upgrades might sound powerful now, I told you that Chaos in the Old World is built on asymmetry. And because Khorne has the best units, their cards don't even hold a candle to the other faction's cards. Nurgle, the Plague Lord, has cheap units and is great at targeting populous regions. Sure, Khorne can kill tons of Nurgle's units, but they'll be back in a flash. Nurgle excels at avoiding combat with movement and clever card play. There's a mechanic in Chaos in the Old World called Corruption. To corrupt an area, players place cultists there who pop out these little corruption tokens. Have enough corruption tokens on an area and it pops, giving points to everyone who participated. Now take a look at this upgrade card. Preventer of Ruin. Score 3 victory points each time a region is ruined. The win condition is only 50 points, and an upgrade like this can make Nurgle rocket up the victory point track. Zinch is super sneaky. Chaos in the Old World is played with an action point system, and when you're out of action points, your turn's over. Zinch has tons of sneaky, low-cost cards, even zero-cost cards, allowing them to bide their time and make a bunch of moves after every player has finished. Remember how Nurgle relies on corrupting regions to gain points? Imagine that after the Nurgle player has used up all of their action points, the Zinch player plays Dazzle, causing all of their cultists to sit out for the corruption phase. It can be devastating. And finally, Shaunesh. Shaunesh is really flexible, with relatively powerful units, but also cards that can capitalize on the less valuable regions on the board. One of my favorite upgrades in the game is for the Demonettes. In battle, Demonettes can only be hit by battle die results of 6. This can make the warrior units of Shaunesh really sneaky and steal battles even from Khorne. These powers are so good. The balance of this game is obscured by a vast decision space. As you try to come up with a semblance of strategy, Khorne is ripping through units, Nurgle is flooding the board, Zinch is sitting in the corner laughing at what's transpiring, and Shaunesh is waiting for the opportunity to strike. It's clear that getting asymmetry right in this game was an important step of the design process. Here's a quote from designer Eric Lang. "It was important that each of the 4 play quite differently. From the beginning, I knew that each would have a unique alternate path to victory that reflected of the nature of its power. The challenge was in making sure that both victory conditions dovetailed throughout the course of play. In this way, players would each have a unique, intersecting approach to ruining a world, rather than playing 4 games of solitaire." I think he's nailed it. There are games out there that have more asymmetry than chaos, but I think if you go too far, sometimes it can be hard to even know what your opponents are doing. And there are some games that rein in asymmetry, probably in favor of balance or more consistent gameplay. But then you don't get this immense satisfaction you have when you pilot your unique faction perfectly. Chaos in the Old World gives me that same experience I had as a kid playing StarCraft. This is an awesome game.